we've had for the last couple of weeks and how whether or not he was hurting his draft stock.
He did.
He did. And he ends up going 5 to the Utah Jazz, which is hilarious because it was one of the destinations he going 5 to the Utah Jazz, which is hilarious because it was one of the destinations he didn't want to go to.
No, have you been?
No, I've not.
Okay, because Haley really wants to go, she was just saying. And Connor, have you ever been?
Nah, I'm good on Utah.
Okay, no. You would love Utah's awesome, man. Especially you ever snowboarded?
No.
Anything? Okay. It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
beautiful. He is going to hate it. Is all I'm going to tell you. He's going to hate it.
Well, I just love the fact that he didn't want to go there, and they say, we don't care. We're selecting you anyway.
And Danny Ainge but the question is, did Danny Ainge outsmart everybody by taking...
So here's the thing. You mentioned one of the best towns. There was a lot to unpack with the Sixers selection of Edgecombe with the 3rd overall pick. So let's go back down memory lane a little bit. When we found out that the Sixers were getting the 3rd overall pick, when they won the lottery, because to me that's a win. Right?
Well, the fact that we got to pick last night.
There was a chance that you weren't going to get a pick, and you climbed all the way up to 3. I still said the very next morning when we were on the air, I'm thrilled that they got the pick because if they didn't get one last season, it just adds to how horrible last year was. At least you got a pick. However, I don't believe that anybody from picks 3 on, franchise-changing player, franchise-altering player. Honestly, I don't even think Dylan Harper is a franchise-altering player. He's just a nice addition to Victor Wembanyama, who is the guy the Spurs will be building around.
People would think differently sitting next to the family section with Dylan Harper, but that's all right.
The only franchise-changing player was Cooper Flagg, and that's why he was number 1 overall pick, and that's why we knew that for weeks, or for months, honestly.
Yeah, months.
So VJ Edgecombe is not going to be a franchise-changing player. He's a guy that they wanted to add to what they currently have and what they're building. You've seen over the last couple of years with the draft, they're getting guards, and they're getting athletic guards. Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and now Edgecombe with last night's selection. Do I believe he is the better prospect than Ace Bailey? I do not. I think Ace Bailey, from a basketball standpoint, is the better prospect. But something that I'm going to get into a lot today, VJ Edgecombe might be the most sane pick for what this organization has been dealing with for years, and that's dysfunction.
Of all the words you use, sane, embellish that a bit.
Well, has anything with this organization for 10 years been normal?
Yeah, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain. For a while, they've been doing things that are very calming, very competent, very otherwise. We've just been used to the insanity of Joel Embiid doing his own thing, doing whatever he wants to do, and veterans that are sort of
I'm not
not
just talking about players.
That's the truth. You mean executives?
Dude,
we're going back a long way now.
I know, but
coaches
over the last 10 years, let's think about this.
Yeah, but
for
we're
a
going
second.
back.
I know we are, and I'm feeling some sanity right now with this team. I've seen a GM get pushed out, and I was actually kind of okay with it. I see the GM that came in has burner accounts. He gets pushed out. I saw a head coach that was only hired to lose on purpose all of a sudden become the interim GM and make draft picks.
Right.
And making trades for Zaire Smith. I've seen coach after coach after coach. I've seen assistant coach after assistant coach after assistant coach. I've seen star player after star player after star player get upset, want to get traded. I've seen a roster to start the season not be the same roster in the middle of the season, and not just because they made tweaks, no, because they made major overhauls. And then I've heard the exact same nonsense every single year, the same excuse. Well, they didn't have enough time to play with one another. Well, that's what happens when you don't have a set roster. So for the first time in a while, it looks like they're trying to build towards something.
Okay.
And why would you bring in a player who did not want to be here? If you're the Utah Jazz, you're starting fresh, right? Like they literally tanked. They just didn't get a top pick. They got 5th overall. So they take who they believe is the best player from a basketball standpoint. The Sixers are looking to have some sort of non-dysfunction. They want function. They want sanity. And maybe selecting a player who might have a good head on his shoulders is a good start.
I got you, and I think Edgecombe is the guy. So that if you're coming at it from that angle, it absolutely works. I mean, it definitely does. And there's so many things we'll get into about Edgecombe.
So many. That
seems like it's a really, really good choice. But again, is it about talent, or is it about? Are you trying to get the most talented players, or are you trying to get players that are all like? It seems like you went and got another guy that you already have a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of getting the most talented player on the board. And it was no, and last night, Connor, if you're watching the draft, there was no, like we were discussing it yesterday morning, there was no doubt that the scouting services and everything said Ace Bailey should have been the third player off the board.
Yeah,
right.
I'll ask you this real quick, Johnny. Has the Sixers' problem been more talent, or has it been more other stuff?
Well, the thing is, though, the other stuff you've been talking about, like Andrew was just talking about there, we're going back in a little bit. Because the stuff that has been now
was it not dysfunctional a year ago with ramp-up periods?
Like, well, no, that's the Sixers.
It's been dysfunctional for 10 years.
But that's not players.
Well, kind of
is.
It kind of was.
The only, the dysfunction is the guy that you don't want to send out of town.
Well, no.
But the organization was bought into it.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Daryl Morey was the one going on radio stations saying, "Hey, we're ramping him up."
Because Daryl Morey's tied to the petulant child that is Joel Embiid.
It's not just him. You had a guy in a club holding up a sign that his GM's a liar while he's still on the team.
That is again. They're talking about these veteran guys. The young guys that Daryl Morey's been bringing in are guys that are good. So I'm very, very happy with that. But as long as you're tied to Joel Embiid, you've got an anvil around your neck. You've got it's the dysfunction is going to be here when you got a guy who does his own thing, plays when he wants to, does his own thing in the offseason.
So you bring in a guy that won't add to the dysfunction.
Okay, I don't think Ace Bailey is going to end up being that myself. I don't think that an 18-year-old is coming in and going to cause that dysfunction. And I also believe you might have made a deal. Here's the problem, though. I don't think that Edgecombe would have lasted past 4.
Right.
So I'm not going to criticize Daryl Morey. If Edgecombe was the guy he wanted, I'm not criticizing him for not drafting Ace Bailey and doing my hostage routine, because it was pretty obvious from hearing the analysts that they thought Edgecombe would have gone at 4.
So Gavoni's been the guy that we have been bringing up a lot. He was spot on. Like he was right with a lot of the selections yesterday.
Boy, I'll tell you, he did great work.
And he said in his last mock draft, and we read it yesterday, if the Sixers don't take Edgecombe at 3, he's going off the board at 4.
And that was the consensus after the Edgecombe pick, that he would have went 4. That he wouldn't have been there.
Right.
There's no way that Daryl Morey was trading back to 4 or 5 or whatever and getting Edgecombe.
And so there's a lot to talk about, because I know people, the player itself, aren't necessarily thrilled with, but there's so many factors to it. Like that, if they traded back,
you weren't getting.
Oh, you could have got him at 6.
No, you couldn't.
No, you couldn't have. Like
you would not have. You wouldn't have got him at 4, because if you trade back to 4, you're not getting him. If you said, "Hey, we're going to go back to 4 and trade up from 3," you're not getting him. So it's not.
Somebody may have taken him at 3.
Right.
All right,
so the 4th team, if he move up to 3, they're taking him.
We have a lot to discuss when it comes to this selection. So coming up next, you'll hear from Daryl Morey, who spoke obviously yesterday on the selection. Hear from Daryl Morey. You're going to hear from Jay Billis, who gave his analysis on Edgecombe. And I'm telling you right now, you may not love the pick. You may not love the player. But if you weren't listening to the guy speak yesterday, coming up next, you will fall in love with the person. Hear from VJ Edgecombe and his inspiring story next. It's Kincade and Salciunas, 97.5 The Fanatic.